Good morning everyone, it's Danny. Alrighty, so I had a discussion with one of my viewers in regards to orchid roots and how, as you all know, it's said that they go out and about in search of moisture and stuff like that, just like a little person in the desert. So this actually inspired me to make a video. See, I don't really think about subjects until I discuss it with you guys, and I figure out that I actually need to talk about this. Alrighty, so today we will discuss about the theory that orchid roots go out and about in search of water, and how this is a perfect example of logic applied wrongly and how it can lead to little catastrophes. So okay, let's start the subject. Okay, so let's be serious here. You know how I encourage you to think things logically, and this is to your own benefit because most of the times you'll probably be more correct than some articles. So let's start with the idea that orchid roots are actually going out and about in search of water and moisture because that's what they do. Now, okay, let's take a few examples and see if that actually is true. And in the end, let's see what this completely false idea led to. So as you know, Phalaenopsis orchids are absolute queens of having aerial roots that go everywhere. They seem to go everywhere. And in many articles, you will find this idea that they actually go in search of moisture, and if you actually put a tray of water underneath the orchid, the roots will go down towards the moisture. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this doesn't necessarily apply, especially to Phalaenopsis orchids, but also some other types of orchids. Now, indeed, some of the roots will go down towards the moisture source, but other roots just seem to have a mind of their own. No matter where the water source is, most probably at the bottom of the pot, they actually seem to go up towards the sky. Now, what would be a logical explanation for this? Because obviously, they really don't care about the moisture we provided underneath. Phalaenopsis orchids are really not the only ones who do this. For example, this Oncidium, who looks like he really wants to reach the sky. And also this deciduous dendrobium. Now, I assure you there is far more moisture in this pot than in the air. So why do they actually put out their roots high in the air, even though there isn't too much moisture in the air? Certainly not as much as in the pot. Some might argue that the media is not appropriate and actually the orchid is searching for some better media. Well, instead of thinking like this, instead of correlating the search for moisture with the bad media and so on, I propose a different point of view. So let's start with the basics. What are the functions of the orchid root, your usual epiphyte orchid root? Well, number one, to absorb moisture, of course, and to feed the plant. But number two, to anchor the orchid to whatever surface it is located on. Now imagine this orchid is up in a tree. Does it really have a pool of water somewhere so the roots will go towards the pool of water? No, it actually has constant moisture all over. And whatever it rains everywhere, not in a necessarily certain spot that the orchid needs to go to. So the roots will actually get even moisture all over the place, at least in most cases. So why do they go randomly everywhere, downwards, upwards, left, right? Why do they do this? I think you'll agree with me that by putting out its roots randomly in all directions, this orchid has better chances of finding suitable surfaces to attach on. If this orchid will only produce roots to the right, maybe on this side the branch is pretty short and cannot actually anchor the orchid correctly. But if the roots go in different directions, they have more chances to find suitable surfaces to attach this orchid on. And also, of course, it is weight distribution. If an orchid only anchors itself in one direction, this direction might become pretty loose. So by anchoring herself in multiple directions, it has a more stable placement. So in the end, the theory to which why orchid roots seem to go everywhere, I think is better suited to location purposes and anchoring purposes rather than finding moisture, which is anyway available all the time through moisture or rain. You will inevitably have roots that go downwards, in the pot, outside the pot, and inevitably some roots that just go everywhere, wherever they choose. This act of randomness is actually in the benefit of the orchid, who simply wants to be safe in her location and not fall down to the ground and rot. And still, if you want to extend the subject further, why do they grow? Well, two reasons. The more they grow, the better the anchor, and the more they grow, the longer the surface of absorption is, so the orchid will get more moisture and will be anchored better. Now, to support my theory about orchid roots actually trying to search for surfaces to cling on rather than moisture, let's take for example some terrestrial orchids like a Paphiopedilum. Now, Paphiopedilums don't usually produce aerial roots that go up and about. This is because they're terrestrial. Their genetic code tells them that soil will always and forever be underneath them. This is their anchor actually. So because they don't grow on trees, their genetic code doesn't tell them that their roots should go up and about like a Phalaenopsis. The roots should always go downwards, or at least in a downward motion. This is why you will not see a Paphiopedilum orchid with roots growing everywhere. Okay, so in the end, I promised I will tell you about the little catastrophe that this pretty wrong assumption produced. Now, you might know in some articles, they mentioned the fact that if you want an orchid to produce roots, to promote roots, you should not water it and let the orchid produce roots that will go in search of moisture and so on. This is actually what my viewer has told me. He wasn't watering his orchids because he wanted to promote and for the roots to come out and search for that moisture, which was not provided. And now it's pretty obvious why this is a false assumption. As you have seen, roots don't necessarily go towards the moisture source, nor do they actually come out in search for moisture. I do have a video in which I tell you that the best way to promote root growth is by providing moisture. And by this I mean providing a good environment for the orchid's roots, which will inevitably be produced to stay alive and to not desiccate. And I'll show you a little example of that. Okay, so this orchid suffered a little accident. As you can see, I don't have too much media on the top. This is because it actually fell over. But hopefully you can see the roots that were growing here in the media, they have stopped growing. And this is because I used bark, which tends to dry off pretty fast. So the moisture level on the top of the media has dropped dramatically. And this has not been too good on the roots. So when I say that promoting roots is done by providing humidity, I am actually referring exactly to this thing, making sure that the root tips do not stop growing. This is actually specific to different sorts of orchids. A Phalaenopsis orchid most probably will not behave like this because she doesn't necessarily really need too much moisture. But this Silagene actually does need moisture, and her roots are far more sensitive than those of a Phalaenopsis. So what I will do here is provide a layer of sphagnum moss just for these roots to actually grow properly and not stop growth. Okay, I hope you made some sense out of this video and understood what I was trying to say. What do you guys think? Do you think roots are going in search of moisture, in search of an oasis? Or do you think they grow with the purpose of actually attaching the orchid and then absorb the moisture, which will inevitably come from the humidity around them or from rains, which usually fall everywhere? Alrighty, so if you want to see more orchid videos, don't forget to subscribe. You can leave me suggestions or questions or opinions in a comment below. And thank you so much for joining. I will see you next time. Bye!